This is the PFG Live, and I'm Spencer Webb from Southern New Hampshire, where we sometimes have audio problems. Thank you for telling me that, guys. Sorry I was a little slow on the uptake. It's all good now. That's awesome. So where were we? YouTube folks, CJ Stevens checking in, saying 72 degrees and a beautiful sunny day in East Tennessee. Happy Sunday. Snatch Co. is reporting in 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 32% humidity, 11% miles per hour, and a nice sunny day in Maple Shade, New Jersey. And a tree also grows in New Jersey. Joel L's checking in, saying today will be the 104th consecutive day of 100 degrees plus weather in the Arizona. Oh my gosh. Carl Tauber is here, 68 degrees, dew point 43 in Rhode Island. Wow. Let's see. So we're good now, right? If you will please all carefully join us and read the chat. We do this not because it's easy, but because we thought it would be. Happy Sunday. So I think we got all the technical nonsense worked out. And we are brought to you on bus B2. And I think we're good now. Joel L gives us a double thumbs up. We have to be good. So we have a couple of topics to talk about today. Tucker is on his way to IMTS. I think on Wednesday we're going to try to do a random live and get him on the air. So stick around on watch your YouTube channel or watch the Discord, and we'll try to get Tucker on for a random live. We have no plan, no backup, and no weapons worth a damn. So we should be fine. We have a couple of topics today. One of which is the Tuck says the plan is that there's no plan. Exactly correct. We have a couple of topics. The first one is something that's been cooking for a while. You heard about it in the past. We're bringing that project to a successful close. The EINSTAR scanner project. So this summer, I had an intern working here, and that was Shaylee Lagasse, who is awesome. Shaylee is majoring in biomedical engineering. And when we talked about a whole bunch of stuff that she could work on, she kind of lit up on the scanner stuff. So one of the things we reviewed was the available material on the EINSTAR scanner, including our friend James Clow that did some videos and did a bunch of scanning for his grinder project. And then we proceeded. So I know we talked about it a little before, but this is now the successful conclusion. And if you look at the picture on your screen, which is also the thumbnail, actually, let me see if I can get you a clearer picture of that. It doesn't have all the nomenclature. Let's see. Yeah, there's one. So the Norseman is for scale. By the way, a Norseman is 5 inches long, so it really is for scale. So the original part that we chose as our victim was my hand brace, okay, which is custom made by a certified hand therapist, and this is for the disease of arthritis of the CMC joint, and it immobilizes or roughly immobilizes that joint, and I'm supposed to wear this as much as I could stand it. And it's a really weird shape. It's nothing but curves. Very difficult to take measurements of. So this was a really excellent choice for a part to do a test scan on and see if we could replicate it. The goal was scan a thing, print the thing, so that you're literally running a duplicator, a replicator, just like on Star Trek. So we went through that process, and it was non-trivial. There were problems with the software. The hardware seems pretty nice, and it's really software problems that we had. And learning to scan something that was relatively small for that scanner was one of the issues, and there was a trap. And then figuring out all the software settings, and then finally being able to capture the data, massage the data, and put it out for printing. So you may recall our discussion of P1. P1 only has to last 15 minutes, and it did. So this was P1, and the subject, that's me, put this thing on and found that the thumb hole was very tight. Okay, so P1 was undersized or oversized. How would you put it? So P2 was improved. Now the problem was scanning down that hole, and I know we've talked a little bit about that before. The issues had to do with scanning down a tunnel, and how to put markers in the tunnel so that you can get that thing scanned. Now the EINSTAR, being a fairly large scanner, was making that difficult. We finally figured it out, and by we, I mean Shaley figured it out. So the last piece of the puzzle was, let's document this. So what I had Shaley doing is, as discoveries were made in how to read the software, especially with respect to translation. There were some words that did not translate well, and from the Chinese, and we had to figure out what they really meant. One of the traps was the software had a setting for small parts, and the way it read was, if you're scanning small parts, use this setting. If you're scanning large parts, use this setting. Well, what is this? This is a small part. It was a trap. So that really meant something like, if you want a small area that will be scanned, choose this button. And if you want a large area to be scanned, choose the other button. And the trade-off, if I recall correctly, was that if you scanned a small area, you missed a bunch of reference points in your scanning zone. And Shaley had set up a scanning zone with a black piece of fabric and a lot of randomly placed dots. So even though you were scanning a small thing, the scanner would pick up many of the dots and it would get good reference. If you selected yeah, exactly, Evil says, so it's a field of view setting. That seems to be what it was. So if you said, oh, I want the small one, and you shrunk the field of view, then you lost a bunch of references and it didn't work well at all. And that was a real challenge, because it was trial and error. You just had to keep trying things and figure out what worked and what didn't. So we got through that, and we documented everything. So there's a document. We haven't released it yet. My goal is to get it out in the next couple of days. We'll put it as a PDF on the Discord server. It'll be in the, I think we'll put it in the reference section of our Discord server. We have a reference channel, and it'll be a reference document for the EINSTAR scanner. And once that was figured out, and a few other software issues that were figured out, we started getting really good scans. And this part that I'm showing you right now, I've worn this for many hours, and it's perfect. It's a very good copy of this. Now, when I say perfect, perfect. When I say perfect, this is an application where 5/1000ths of an inch is not going to make or break anything. 10/1000ths of an inch is not going to make or break anything. So this is not one of those cases where you're taking a precision machined part and you're going to scan it and then spit out another copy of it. The resolution and the accuracy is just not there. So stay tuned, and we will be happy to share this document so that other people can benefit from it, and maybe other people will add to it. The EINSTAR scanner is about $900, which is not bad compared to some of the other prices. So this has been a big win. I like it. And there are other applications for it that make a lot of sense. Think of things like scanning a horse's saddle. That's one of the same cases of a very organic shape, which doesn't lend itself to other kinds of measurement. Test Room is here. Welcome aboard. He says, good evening, and checking in late from Oostkapelle, Netherlands. 19 degrees science and 67% relative humidity. Nice to see you. I noticed you changed your name. You dropped the 2003. Which is fine. We're non-numeric here. Moving on, we have some little stuff to announce. We have some new stickers in the sticker pack. Oh, no problem about being mobile. In honor of Unix Carbide, who of course is in New York City somewhere listening to us, DBX, our magnificent sticker designer, has designed the Unix Carbide Logistics sticker, and we love it. It's in stock. It's a little guy. It's like 2 inches. And on the back, check it out. There it is, PFG.GG. So we're using, what's the sticker company again? It's Sticker App. And they do very high quality stickers. And now you could print on the backing sheet, which is kind of cool. So can you scan your hand? Yes. So you got to be careful in this particular application, Tuck, because if what you're suggesting is that I scan my hand and then I make my own brace, that I'm not going to do, because the shape of the brace is actually the certified professional knows what they're doing, and then there's me. So I think, when you get to the size of hands and faces and, bigger than a bread box, I think things get a lot easier, but at least we now have a recipe. And if I could help you with, I know secretly you're Iron Man, and I would never reveal that. Happy to help. Another sticker that we this is a very creative sticker from DBX. Take off on an old genre. Remember, kids, electricity will kill you. Showing a kid climbing a high tension wire tower, which I don't recommend. And on the back, I have a story about this. On the back, a little bit of PFG.GG stuff. It says "Get flat, stay flat," and it's cool. Now, you may look at this and say, "Gee, there's nothing in that white spot in the middle." So, this was an excellent test of the supplier of the stickers sticker app. So, I sent a message saying, "Hey, there was an error in printing one of our stickers." And they immediately came back and said, "Hey, we're so sorry. We'll be happy to give you a 20% discount for a reprint." I think they thought I meant I made an error, but they made an error. So, yes, that's it. Snatchco got it. Freddy Kilowatt is the name of the character. Yes. And the light bulb, right, that was the same series. And we did a takeoff on that. A satire, as it were. So I went into my emails and I found my order confirmation and I found my shipping confirmation from Sticker App. And they had these little images of your stickers. And I noted that this sticker on the back had what I put on the back in one place, and in the other place, in the shipping confirmation, it was missing. So I gathered that information up and I sent it to Sticker App. And they said, "Oh, wow, that's really interesting. Don't worry, we'll take care of you." And the next thing I know, it's in process, and we'll be getting another shipment of those with a thing. And it was another QR code on the back. So that was a good story, a good plug for Sticker App. It was like they stood up to their reputation as a good supplier. And finally, I know you've been waiting for this. We've been talking about clutter credits now for weeks and weeks. We now have official clutter credits. And the symbol, the clutter credit symbol, was settled on by DBX, and there it is. You can get your very own clutter credit sticker, and on the back it says clutter credit, KP Discord, and this is actually an invitation QR code for the Discord. So by the way, if you're on YouTube and you don't know what Discord is, you want to come join us, there you go. You could pause the screen, do a screenshot of that, and come and join us. So those were the new stickers that just came in, and we'll be putting those in the sticker pack, which is a lot of fun. Speaking of sticker pack, you may have noticed that we developed our very own utility knife called the Knut. And I have one, I don't have one with a blade in it here, but there's the Knut. And it's a 3D printed, really super simple utility knife blade holder. This happens to be P3. And it locks the blade out, and you can put it in your pocket. And I'm throwing these in with every order. Officially, it's every order over $50, but I'm throwing them in with every order for a while. So if you place an order with Kinetic Precision, we'll give you a Knut. So I thought it was really funny. My brain went utility knife, ut, and K and knife, Knut. And then after we name it, the Knut, I find out that Knut is a Norse word for knot, like tying a knot. And then I said to myself, "Oh, look what I just did. I just designed a knife and gave it a Norse name." So I think maybe I was influenced by John Grimsmo being here a couple of weeks ago. But I assure you, we're not seeking to take away any business from Grimsmo Knives. So if you go to pfg.gg/Knut, you will find the Knut page, and on the very bottom is a little message for you. So that was a little fast, fun thing that we came up with. But again, we'll be throwing that in with every order. And if you want one, let me know, and we'll get one to you. So that was the Knut. Let's see. So I'm going to give you I think the order we're going here. I want to talk about the 20,000 mile report on my Ford Lightning. This is not a machining topic, but I told you I'd give you a report every 10,000 miles. I have nothing to report. It's been great. Like, totally fine. We had one little complaint when they switched the non-heated steering wheel to a heated steering wheel at no cost, which was cool because we had originally bought the truck during supply chain problems. So when they put the new package in with the heated steering wheel, they also changed out the turn signal. Well, the turn signal was wicked sticky. I don't know why, and this bugged me for weeks. And then finally, I said to my dealer, "This is really uncomfortable." And they said, "Oh, we'll take care of you at the 20,000 mile checkup." So I had that checkup a few weeks back, and at no cost to me, they changed out the turn signal switch, which was great. That was it. I mean, I think I asked them to change the cabin air filter, and they said, "Really? We changed it, only a couple of months ago." I said, "Yeah, do it again." So that was it. So would I recommend a Ford Lightning truck F-150? Yes. I'm really enjoying it, and it's been a fantastic vehicle, even on long trips and stuff. Now, I will admit, I don't drive 3 hours for work. So all of my driving has been, 1 hour, 2 hours total mission time. But when it goes over and I have to use public charging, it's actually been fantastic. So very, very happy to give you a positive report there. I want to get into peel grinding, but if you guys have any questions that you want to pop in first before we talk about peel grinding and the Lapzetti plates, I will be happy to address that. Just jump in on the Discord server or the YouTube chat, and we can address that. It's been a pretty laid-back weekend here. Today, anyway. Yesterday, we finished moving Sam into the Sam space, and here's a picture. How appropriate! Here's a picture of the F-150 loaded up with, it looks exactly like every other vehicle on the road heading into Boston this past week with student living stuff. So that got delivered and unloaded, and it was a very successful day. Very tiring day, but a very successful day. Okay, so Ready Kilowatt. Yes, you guys figured it out. Is that the name, DBX? Is that the name of that character? Is that Ready Kilowatt? Or Ready Kilowatt was the light bulb guy, and the kid was the one that was always getting electrocuted? I think that's the way it was. We'll find out. So, you may recall that we, Unix Carbide started thinking about, he wanted a Lapzetti plate. Let me back up a little bit. Robin Renzetti, in a video called The Magic Sanding Plate, I think was the name of the video. We will be including the link in the description of the YouTube video. He taught us about taking a nice flat plate. In his case, it was a cast iron surface plate. There it is. DBX found it. Yeah, so there's Ready Kilowatt, who tortured young children with electricity. What else do you need to say? Thank you. Evil's got it. It's called the Magic Sanding Plate, Rob Wren's Tool Room Tip number 3. We'll put that YouTube link in the description. So he taught the use of this, taking a relatively small surface plate, adhering, I'll just let that hang, DBX. That's beautiful. Adhering sandpaper to it, and then using it for doing an initial flattening on a part that is going on to the chuck of a surface grinder. One of the challenges is if you put a part on the surface grinder that, for example, is a flat, I shouldn't say flat, but is a sheet. Let me get a sheet for you. Here's one. So here's a plate, and you're going to surface grind this plate. If it is got a saddle bend in it like that, and you try to put it down on the mag chuck of the surface grinder, if you put it one way, it's going to have 2 points of contact until it kind of flops around. And then if you put it the other way, it's going to have a line contact and can rock around. Neither of those are good. and they're both unstable. So by taking your part and putting it down on what he calls the magic sanding plate, what we, in honor of Robin, call the Lapzetti plate, and you give it a rub, okay, two things happen. Number one, you could check the contact points. Number two, you could literally create your contacts for dropping it on the surface grinder. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, isn't that similar to what a PFG stone does when you use it? And the answer is, yes, it is. Now, the downside, I shouldn't say the downside, but the flatness you're going to get from that abrasive paper on the surface plate is really proportional to the flatness of the sandpaper. And some sandpapers are not that great. Other lapping films, notice I'm using the terms differently, lapping films are designed to be quite good. So if you could use a lapping film, you want to make sure that the plate is nice and flat. CJ Stevens says, I have a pair of 10 by 12 granite surface plates bought after watching his video, and I use them all the time. Excellent, CJ. DBX says, the person in our sticker came from a sign in Japan. Oh, that's right. I forgot the origins. This came from a sign in Japan warning people away from the train tracks. So this is actually not Ready Kilowatt. This is from a Japan. I remember the picture now. This was like a sign, a billboard in the train station. So that's the origins. Thank you for clearing that up, sir. I didn't remember that. So that's the Lapzetti plate is a useful, handy surface to quickly lap apart and get it on the yes, Unix Carbide provided that picture during one of the Unix Carbide logistics runs to Japan. I'll leave that right there. So Unix wanted a small Lapzetti plate that didn't take up a lot of room because his shop is relatively small, and he came up with the idea we settled on an 8 by 10 inch piece of steel plate that was reasonably flat and can hang on the wall when it's not in use. Reasonably flat, reasonably stiff, not crazy. A 10 by 12 granite surface plate is pretty nice, except you have to have it somewhere, which means if you have it under the bench, you have to lift it, put it under the bench. That's cool. You're probably not going to hang it on the wall. You probably don't have like tons of excess horizontal surface space to just leave it out. Art that makes art. Wes says, I use a couple of marble tiles I got from Home Depot with a braiding paper affixed to them. Absolutely. So you can go get a piece of maybe marble countertop. Evils, I know, recently picked up a piece of marble, and you can inspect it, and if it's flat enough, you're good to go. So I said to Unix, well, let's see what we could do here. And CJ Stevens says, I like the wall hanging idea. Yeah. So Unix came up with the 8 by 10 plate, and then through conversation, we came up with the idea of having 3 1/4-20 threaded holes in the short sides on both sides. And then you could use the 1/4-20 holes for whatever you want. It could be used for a handle. It could be used for a hanging hook, which is, what we're talking about. So I started pricing out just pieces of plate, and I realized I have 5/8 inch thick steel plate in my pile, right? And I was still paying for that piece of plate with my clutter credits. So what better thing to do than to use up that plate and get that out of my stockpile? So I pull out this piece of, actually 2 pieces of plate, and I measured it out, and I had enough to make 5 8 by 10 inch Lapzetti plates. Yeah, Almost Machining says, when using a plate to prep a surface, be wise about hand placement and pressure applied as to not mimic an existing surface imperfection. Yeah, good point. And Evils says that his piece was granite, but today he also has a 12 millimeter glass plate with sandpaper that he used today. So yeah, it's super useful in the shop. And again, if you're going to plop something down on the chuck of the surface grinder, you want to make sure that it's making contact. So I pull out this plate, and the plate is A36, well marked, and it was flame cut, lots of gloop on the edges. It was nothing fancy. And I had purchased it as a drop for some project, and it's been sitting around collecting space and negative clutter credits. So I took it out, and the first thing I did with it is I used it to teach my son Jared about plasma cutting. So we actually went ahead and I've shown these pictures before. I don't know if I could find them. I wasn't prepared for this, but we went outside and we started doing some plasma cutting, and we plasma cut the plates and ended up with 5 blanks. Oh, that's a good idea. CJ Stevens says, I also use a few old parallels with emery and crocus cloths glued on. Excellent. So we plasma cut this A36. So now we have this A36 plates, oversized, ready to machine the edges. Now, some of you are like nodding your heads up and down, knowing exactly where this is going. But when you plasma cut the edge of a plate, you can end up with some kind of hardened material. Now, this is A36, but still, you end up with this very crusty surface. So I throw it in the Bridgeport, and I have these 6 flute 3/4 inch stubby end mills that have been kicking around for a while. They come in very handy, especially when dealing with really, crufty materials. The carbide seems to just eat it, no problem. Especially the 6 flutes, such that it's very stout. So I started cutting those, and I was getting nice purple chips, and I cleaned up the edges of 2.5 plates. So the two plates that I got the edges all prepped on, I took over to the surface grinder, and I was going to surface grind both sides. Nothing super fancy, but it would be flat. What is the first thing you do? You go over to the Lapzetti plate to flatten the Lapzetti, or to at least indicate the Lapzetti plate contact points. So that was kind of funny. So I did that, and wasn't too happy with that process, because it looked like I was going to be fighting it. So instead, I went to get my favorite tape, the green. It's used for as a powder coating masking tape, and it's one of our favorites. And there it is, McMaster-Carr part number 7630 Alpha 23. CJ Stevens says, the dross usually pops off with a hammer easily a lot of times. If the dross is too thick, speed up the torch travel. Yeah, we were past that already. So it did come, a lot of it did come off with the hammer. So that was, and I did break out the angle grinder, as I recall, and kiss it to the sides. And we were getting there. So I ended up making a 3-point support for the side for the plate, for the face of the plate that was going down on the chuck. This green tape that I just showed you has a thickness of 3.5 mils, and if you take 2 layers of that tape, you end up with a 7 mil foot. So it turned out to be a perfectly fine setup. and the 3 feet made contact. Here's a picture of the 3-foot setup. Actually, I think the next picture has, yeah, that's the double layer. So I had these 7 mil feet in approximately the right places, which is 25% in from the edge for the 2 of them, and then on the 50% line, 25% in from the edge on the 3rd one. And I confirmed that with a card, with a piece of paper, and I went around and made sure that, in fact, the 3 feet were contacting. And then I went ahead and put a minimum magnet, so a little bit of magnet on the magnetic chuck of the grinder, such that I couldn't slide it with my thumb. That was plenty. And went off and started grinding. And here I am. I'm like, yeah, we got this. This is no problem. Had my favorite wheel on there, the Norton 5SG wheel. Yes, Evils correctly points out, no more magnet to prevent it from sagging. Let's talk about that for a second, because it's actually really interesting. If you take a plate and you support it on 3 points, like as shown, you will get a minimum amount of sagging, kind of. This is a rabbit hole you do not want to go down. In 2 dimensions, we have these points, these minimum sag points that we know about, that you can support a beam by, and it will minimize how much the beam sags. Because, Robin says everything's rubber. I say everything's pasta. Same thing. So when you go to these 3 points, which, by the way, is right out of a federal standard for surface plates. How do you support a surface plate? How do you lap a surface plate? It's supported on 3 points, and those 3 points are the 3 points. It's easy to assume that those 3 points are the minimum sag points for that structure. That's not exactly correct. It's close, but not correct. So I just decided this is my standard procedures. I do that, and then I give it a grind, and then I flip it over, and I give it a grind, and then we measure it. Well, if you place this plate, thank you, DBX put a note on the reference shelf. Yeah, I'm getting to that. I know I know where you're going, Evils. This is the answer now. That was the setup. Here comes the answer. So if you take a plate that's like that and you put it on the table, let's just assume you get little or no sag, okay? But it's under the influence of gravity. And we're pretty comfortable with gravity. We've lived with it for a long time. And gravity over the area of that plate is pretty well constant. I think we can agree that while there is a gravity, gradient around us, you have to go, 5, 10, 15 miles to make 2 measurements to start to see that gradient. So over the course of 10 inches, you're not going to see it. However, it's an R² effect. Okay. Ask Newton, he'll tell you. But a magnet is a different animal. First of all, it's not an R² effect. You can argue it's different. I can't say it's an R³, and I can't say that it's R². It's somewhere in the middle. More importantly, your magnetic chuck is not uniform over an area greater than the 10 inches, especially when the edges of your plate are getting to the edge of your chuck. So if we do a thought experiment and we crank the magnet up to 11, okay, I would argue that you're going to bend the plate even though it's mounted on 3 points somehow. Probably the center is going to have stronger magnetic attraction than the edges on the 8-inch dimension of an 8-inch chuck. This is the issue. So by using the minimum amount of magnet and the 3-point support, you're minimizing the effect on the plate. It's not zero, but it's pretty small. Now keep in mind, it's a 5/8 inch thick steel plate. It's pretty stiff, but we still want to keep that influence as low as possible. So that's the reason for the minimum magnet. Once I was comfortable with the hold on the plate, it was time to get to grinding. So imagine my surprise when my very nicely dressed 5SG wheel started grinding, and then all of a sudden, using my ears, something wasn't right. And I'm looking at the plate, and the grinding is not going well. And then I see it kind of failing, like rubbing. I immediately stopped the process and said, "Jeepers, what happened?" I redressed my wheel with a coarser dress. And by the way, I was taking tenths, like 3/10 or 3 or 4/10. I don't remember the exact number. Probably 3/10, not a ton. Did it again. Same thing happened. I stopped and I realized the mill scale, and if you look at this picture, okay, that color, the mill scale is very, very hard and tough. And it dawned on me, yeah. So Wes says, scale on mild steel is a killer. I got killed. At least my grinding process got killed. It was amazing. And then I thought about it and I realized, yeah, when you pick up the angle grinder and you're prepping a piece of mill scale encrusted steel for welding, think of how much work you have to do to get that mill scale off. And I suddenly realized I had underestimated the mill scale grossly. Unix Carbide said to me the other day, he says, there's a whole industry of companies making angle grinder wheels specifically to attack mill scale, and they're not losing any money. They have many products, and they keep trying to improve it. So I stopped and I looked at it and I'm like, this is no good. And I cannot say how light dawned on Marblehead or where the idea came from, but I realized that Adam Demuth had taught us about peel grinding, and it seemed like a logical place to apply it. So tell me if this sounds familiar. If you ever machined a part that was a surface hardened, okay? There's a name for it that I'm missing here, where the hardness of the steel is in 20 case hardened. That's it. A piece of steel that's case hardened. So there's 20 thousandths of hard material on top of soft material. Yeah, thanks Wes, and thanks Snatchco. You all got it right. Case hardening. I should have made it a quiz. Then it would have seemed like I didn't forget. So when you do that, we talk about getting under the case, right? And that's kind of where my head was at. And I realized, this concept that Adam taught me called peel grinding is kind of getting under the hard, miserable, pain in the neck surface. So I actually rewatched his video. Peel grinding is where you go full depth on the wheel, and then you march. It's like side wheeling. You march the wheel as it's oscillating. You march the wheel in 1/2 of a grit diameter per pass. So it's a small feed in the step over at full depth. Wes says conventional mill flame cut surfaces that way. Conventional mill flame cut surfaces that way, the cutter isn't banging into the hard surface. Another excellent point. Right. So if you try to climb mill those miserable edges or those mill scale surfaces, you're banging into the mill scale every cut. Whereas in conventional milling, you're going to come in and scoop it out from the bottom. Exactly. Evils, you got it. So I decided that peel grinding is going to be the answer. So I did a little calculation. I did a little lookup. I'm using a number 46 grit wheel. The average grit diameter was reportedly, or actually the mesh of the grit is reported to be 14 thousandths of an inch. So divide by 2, you get 7 thousandths of an inch. You apply the WIMP factor, and I decided I would start with 3 thousandths of an inch of step over at my full depth. Now, I set my full depth to be 10 thousandths of an inch. Dale says, peel grinding also concentrates the force so that the grains will break down instead of just dulling. Excellent. Anyway, long story short, start that peel grinding process, and it works. It was proceeding perfectly. Of course, in my first, half inch of step over, which was, a bunch of 3,000 steps, my ears are starting to tell me, I'm not so sure this is a good idea. My eyes were telling me, this is an excellent idea. The surface was coming out beautifully. The sound was different. So was it worse or better? It was definitely different. And it took me a while to figure out what was bothering me. When you're machining and you hear a ringing, the first thing that comes to mind is chatter. And I was worried that, my initial reaction was that was sort of a bad thing. Something bad was happening. Upon inspection of the surface, it turned out that, let's see if I can get you a picture of the initial surface. Yeah, here's what the surface looked like starting the peel grind process. This was after attempting the conventional process, and I cleared up, most of an edge and a corner. And then when I flipped it over and started getting the peel grinding process working, this was the very first finished surface I did with the peel grinding process. And it came out very nice. So I want to explain. Oh, hey, there he is. Shaden HKW is here. He says, I always look to the ring of fire. Yes, we're getting to that. We're getting... Stan Zinkowski. We are getting there, Stan. That's on my list. So I want to talk, before we get to that, I want to talk about that sound I was hearing. So I realized that when I'm holding up a grinding wheel. This happens to be a Radiac wheel because it's the one I grabbed before I came upstairs, but it's not the one I used for the process. And I wanted to demonstrate the sounds I was hearing, and this does work. So we're taught to ring a wheel, right? To determine if the wheel is cracked or not. So this is not unusual to do this, to ring a wheel. So let's listen. I'm going to hit the wheel on its face, and it's going to make a sound. Let's all listen to it. This is on the face. Ready? Once again. Okay. Now, I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to hit it on its periphery. Let's see what it sounds like. Once again, on the face. On the periphery. Okay, so for extra credit in the chat, describe what you heard. Tell us what you heard. And then I'll tell you what I think is going on. Josh is typing. Ding, ding, ping, ping. Great. Thanks. Thanks, buddy. You're hired. Dale's typing. Anybody want to? So while you're typing, we cited 2 modes in the wheel. Okay. A crappy tuning fork and a worse tuning fork. Excellent. We call that damping. Okay. Or we call that, lack of resonance, which is 2 different things. But what's happening is when you hit the wheel on the side, okay, or on the face, the big face of the wheel, not the periphery, but the place we typically ring a wheel. Yes, difference in volume, difference in length. So what happens is when we do the traditional ringing of the wheel is vibrating in a mode like this. Okay, the face is literally bending back and forth, and that's a pretty good tuning fork. That's a pretty good resonance. Okay, and when we hit the wheel on the side, there's no good mode in that direction. There's no highly resonant mode. So, and it's really hard not to excite the other mode, even though we're just hitting it that way. I did my best to keep everything in line. So when we do conventional grinding, we're grinding with the wheel and we're putting forces in the wheel in the direction of the radius of the wheel. And that doesn't have a high resonance and it's very strong. When we're peel grinding, we're putting more energy in the direction of the paper, what I call the potato chip mode. And even with my knuckle, right, I get a good ring. With my knuckle on the periphery, it's more of a dull thud. So back to peel grinding. When we do the peel grinding, we're putting a lot of energy into the side of the wheel. It's like side wheeling. And the wheel rings. And that's what I was hearing. I was hearing the wheel ringing. And I was like, oh, that has to be bad. Well, it turns out that it wasn't that bad. Was it happening? Yeah. Did it matter? No. So that was a really interesting lesson. So be aware when you go off to try peel grinding, what's going to happen is you're going to hear a different sound and just continue to believe. So let's look at this index card here. I'm going to try. I can't do this as well as Adam Demuth does it, so I'm sorry. But as we start peel grinding, we have our wheel. Here, I'll do it this way. Let's use an actual wheel as our wheel. We have our wheel, and it's starting to grind the edge, right? And you're going to get a wear pattern on the wheel. And the wear pattern is going to go from being this perfectly magnificently square wheel that you just dressed on the bottom, and it's going to start getting wear. Now, what happens is, if my wheel is progressing this way as I'm peel grinding, I'm going to make sparks, and those sparks. This is what Stan was talking about. Thank you, Evils. There's the link to Adam's video. Those sparks are going to stick to the wheel, and if you watch the wheel from the side, unless you're Stefan Gottsvinter, in which case you watch it from the front. But if you watch the wheel from the plane of the wheel rotation, you're going to see a little spark track that goes around the wheel, and that's where the cutting is happening. So what I observed, this was super exciting to me, what I observed was as the peel grinding started, okay, and marched across my plate, that wheel started wearing. Now, it was cutting beautifully. It was getting through the mill scale beautifully. and I watched the line on the wheel move from the leading edge of the wheel, and then as the wheel wore, that little line, he called it the ring. Stan called it the ring of fire. That little circle of sparks started moving down the wheel, and what I realized is, as the wheel wore, the circle of sparks was happening where the cutting was happening, and it was a wear indicator. And as long as I had ample wheel that had not yet worn, I was going to be on size. This was cool. This peel grinding stuff had all sorts of mechanics associated with it that was really interesting. So I watched and I fiddled around. I ended up, by the way, thank you, CJ. I ended up with 5 thousandths step over. I got ballsy. 5 thousandths step over, and I was 10 thousandths deep. I would, if I had to go 20 thousandths deep, it would have been 20 thousandths deep. Test Room asks a good question. He says, use a wider wheel, ? More stiffness axially. Yeah, I think a wider wheel is a great idea. I was using the widest wheel I had. I forgot to mention this. I have my 5SG wheels are, this one is 3/4 of an inch wide, which is pretty wide for the kind of stuff that I do. And I think a wide wheel for this process is great. So mine was 3/4 of an inch wide. By the way, it's an 8-inch wheel diameter, 3/4 width. So as I marched along, I realized that this thing was indicating to me, like a needle on a meter, it was indicating to me how worn the wheel was. And as it marched across my plate, I watched the line of sparks, and all I was thinking was, who's going to win? If I get to the end of my plate before the line of sparks gets to the end of the wheel, I will have a flat grind. And in fact, I ended up with the line of sparks going half the width of my wheel, which means that the second half of my wheel had the opportunity to finish the job. I'm looking. I had a great picture in here showing that, because what happens is also that the wheel gets dirty from the grind. I have to find this for you, and it literally shows you the half wheel. There it is. I saw it. There it is. This is the picture. So at the end of the grind, the side that was wearing had a different color than the side that was not wearing, and you were able to just read it. Long story short, it worked great. It took about 4 thousandths of dressing to put the wheel back to its flat, unworn condition, and then I was able to do it all again. So that process ended up yielding some really nice results, and I was very happy with that was the picture I put in the thumbnail. Well, here's another picture of these surfaces. They came out great. Another observation is that the peel grinding actually did not yield a cosmetically better surface than a conventional grinding process would have. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that, but it looked like every now and then it would pick something up and it would, leave a line on the work. I couldn't quite figure it out, but if you look at this picture right here, the way I have it oriented, the one on the top was peel ground and the one on the bottom was conventional ground, and they were quite different. So you can make the argument that if you wanted to use peel grinding and then use conventional grinding just to kiss it to do a fine finish, that sounds great to me. Remember, we're working on Lapzetti plates. They don't have to be, perfect. They just had to be good enough for the process. So if that finish really mattered to me, I could have gone back and then run a conventional, just take a 1/10 or 2/10 conventionally, and it would have come out great. So that's the results I got with peel grinding. Highly recommended. Solved a problem. If you go, I strongly urge you to go watch Adam the Machinist's video called Peel Grinding Technique for the Surface Grinder. Dale says, that's exactly what I do. Peel, then conventional finish. I'm glad I'm not insane. Well, at least on that particular thing, we agree. It solved the problem, and the scale, that surface scale, just yielded to this peel grinding process, and it was a great solution. So I passed that along. Maybe that'll help you out. Peel grinding. Know it. Live it. So that's my story. We got 2 of the Lapzetti plates done. Let's see if I have a picture of that. I ended up cleaning them and lubing them. Yeah, here's the picture. Cleaning and lubing the two Lapzetti plates, and they came out just fantastically well. So that's all I got today. So join us in the after show playpen here. If you're on the Discord server, we'll be in the after party roundtable shortly, and we could chat about this. If you have a chance to use peel grinding in your process, we'd love to hear about it. And if you have anything you want to contribute that we haven't talked about, let me know, and we'll add it to the knowledge base. Just a reminder, if you need some PFG stones, they're right over here at PFG.Stones.com, because others have stones, but ours are PFG. I will remind you all to have a great rest of your weekend, to get flat and stay flat, and we'll see you next week. Take care.